Dear all, on behalf of Comstac, I would like to welcome you to today's event. To celebrate World Environment Day, we have two events lined up for you today. The first one is the launching ceremony of Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration, and the other one is Comstac International Seminar on Land Degradation. To begin the inaugural session, we will start with recitation of the Holy Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
For the opening remarks, I would like to invite Ambassador Shahid Kamal, Advisor on Climate Change, Comstac. Please, sir.
Thank you, Hasib. Excellencies, distinguished speakers, participants, friends of the environment, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and cordial greetings from Comstac, Standing Committee for Scientific and Technological Cooperation of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. A warm welcome to all those who are joining us today. Thank you for your presence, especially those who in different regions of the world are connecting with us at this time, and those in distant time zones. We have with us a diverse audience of participants, scientists, practitioners, policymakers, researchers, students, journalists, representatives of civil society organizations, and development agency, as well as other stakeholder groups. Today's event is taking place in the background of the World Environment Day 2022, which calls for global action to protect and restore our planet. We have a twofold program associated with commemoration of the World Environment Day. First, in keeping with the spirit of Only One Earth, we have organized an international seminar on the increasingly important challenge of land degradation. And second, Comstac has taken a new initiative to launch the Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration. The forum will be a collaborative platform that will create a seam of learning, expertise, collaborative programs and partnerships to address challenges relating to climate change and ecosystem restoration. And the forum will be part of the global movement for the protection and revival of ecosystems for the benefit of people and nature. Comstac is hosting this international event today in partnership with the United Nations Environment Programme, International Ecosystem Management Partnership based in China, and the Center for Water Research Technologies in Tunisia. Thank you to our partners for extending their support to Comstac. We would like to express our gratitude to His Excellency Hussein Rahim Taha, Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, for his special address, which will be read out by Ambassador Askar Musinov, Assistant Secretary General for Science and Technology. Comstac has set up the Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration in the framework of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which runs from 2021 to 2030. And in this regard, I'd like to express our deep thanks to Dr. Dechen Sering, Regional Director and Representative for Asia and the Pacific at the UN Environment Programme Office in Bangkok, Thailand, for her participation and for her support for this event. We look forward to promoting cooperation with UNEP, as UNEP is today facilitating global collaboration for the restoration of degraded and destroyed ecosystems. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, which headquarters in Bonn in Germany, in its recent report entitled Global Land Outlook, has pointed out, and I read and quote from here, food supply disruption will become more frequent and food insecurity will rise if land degradation is not immediately reversed in favor of restoration practices. We have with us today Dr. Baron Josephore, lead scientist at the UNCCD in Bonn, to speak to us about the promotion of sustainable land management and restoration of degraded lands and impoverished soils. Thank you very much, Dr. Orr, for your participation. Comstac has attached importance to highlighting the crisis of food and nutrition insecurity in the Sahel region, as most of the countries in the Sahel are members of the OIC. Climate change, land degradation, and desertification are threatening livelihoods of millions of people in the region. We would like to express our sincere thanks and appreciation to Dr. Deji Madoom, the High Representative of the Sahel Coalition, who, despite his very busy schedule, has accepted our invitation to deliver a statement on the challenges of ensuring food and nutrition security confronting the people of Sahel, as well as the initiatives that are being taken to address the critical problems affecting the people of this region. UNEP International Ecosystem Management Partnership has been actively engaged in mobilizing science for sustainable ecosystem management in the framework of South-South cooperation. In this regard, our thanks go out to Dr. Lin Xiu Zhang, Director of UNEP IEMP, for making the closing remarks for our event today. Reversing land degradation is a big challenge, as global food production is being undermined by land degradation and shortage of farmland, water resources depletion, and biodiversity loss. A special welcome goes out to our distinguished panel members and to our moderator. We are privileged to have with us today a highly qualified group of experts representing institutions from Egypt, Germany, Indonesia, Jordan, Pakistan, Tanzania, Tunisia, and the Gambia to talk about the interlinked challenges of climate change and land degradation. Thank you to all our speakers for sharing your experience and expertise on the issue of land degradation, which is indeed a major environmental problem that cuts across many different elements of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Land is a vital resource to humankind, and its degradation is happening at a rapid pace. And so I hope you find the session and the discussion informative and useful, and perhaps also thought-provoking. I wish to conclude by returning to the theme of this year's World Environment Day, which is Only One Earth, and to the campaign slogan of the World Environment Day, which is Living Sustainably in Harmony with Nature. And in this regard, I would like to share with you some words of wisdom which were given by Chief Seattle, a Native American over 150 years back. And he said the following: "We are part of the earth, and the earth is part of us." This is indeed, on this occasion, a very important message and a profound one to strengthen the people-nature relationship, as nature is our life support system. So once again, thank you for your participation in the seminar today. I hope you will have an enjoyable event and wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now for the welcome address and launching of Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration, I would like to invite Coordinator General Comstac, His Excellency Professor Dr. Muhammad Iqbal Chaudhry.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning and good afternoon. Been told that we will have about 300 participants joining us at different interval of this very important workshop. Absolutely delighted that Ambassador Shahid Kamal, our very distinguished colleague, is actually taking leadership in Comstac Climate and Environment Program. Dr. Saab, thank you very much. Professor Dr. Abdul Majid, he is the country manager of ICADA, a very important organization. And let me also tell you that all who's and who's, and also some very influential, very dear colleagues from Diplomatic Corps are here with us. Asmat, my very dear sister, she is the Director General of our accreditation, National Accreditation Agency, also an environmentalist because she was trained in the field of environment and sustainable development. Professor Dr. Shahid Beg. Professor Shahid is the chairman of Pakistan Science Foundation, Pakistan's premier organization. We have our dear brother, Excellency the Ambassador of Lebanon, and we are initiating a program with Lebanon. We have already had agreement of several components of it. And very dear young brother, Ambassador of Kazakhstan, and with Kazakhstan, Comstac has a lot of different programs. We have ambassadors and members of the Diplomatic Corps from Iraq, our brother country, Sudan, and many others. And absolutely delighted that we have a wonderful group of panelists, which has their names have been mentioned by Ambassador Shahid Kamal. See, this whole idea of this seminar is actually a brainchild of Ambassador Shahid Kamal. He has been working in this field since last several decades. An ambassador and diplomat par excellence, he has actually worked and represented Pakistan in so many different countries of the world. And with this deep understanding of international linkages and partnership, he brought so much strength to Comstac And we're very, very proud and happy that he is actually now leading Comstac Environment Program. We're also launching today, as he has mentioned, Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration. You mentioned very rightly that the emphasis has largely been so far on conservation and decreasing emissions and others, but the fact is that situation has degraded to a level that we need to now focus on restoration. Without restoration, we'll not be able to come back to a stage where we can say that we have bent the curve. So it's very, very important that we work in that area. This is in the context of UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. There is a growing realization and understanding that without restoring ecosystem, we'll not be able to go to a level where we can really define the baseline, because every time baseline is lowered, and as a result, we have been, caught into this very vicious cycle. Holding a seminar on a topic of land degradation is extremely important because, as he mentioned, land is the mother of all activities. It is related to the livelihood of everyone, and degradation of land is primarily losing the basic fundamental core and edifice of human life sustenance. So there is certainly an extremely important seminar which we hope to publish the proceeding as well. The network which we are creating through this forum will play an extremely important role in future activities of the forum, and that this is actually in line with the STI Agenda, Science and Technology Innovation Agenda 2027, and as well as the OIC vision that we should be able to contribute towards sustainable development through conservation and restoration of. Based on the central importance of environment and ecosystem and its services, as well as the threat that out of the most vulnerable 10 most vulnerable countries, 5 are in OIC region, it become even more important for us to have a permanent institutional structure as a forum. So we should be able to work with our partners in the effort of not only understanding the reasons, but also to act to improve the situation also. UIC attaches great importance in the issue of climate change, environmental protection, agriculture, and food security. The importance of the environment for sustainable social and economic development is very well understood and appreciated by OIC 2025 program of action, as well as in various declarations of OIC. And Comstac has been given the mandate, being a premier institution of OIC system and being a standing committee of 57 ministers. We have been working in different areas of science and technology and its application in human life. We are also have now taken the responsibility of at least working closely with our partners in the field of environment. Please, at Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem will strengthen the work of OIC in these areas. In fact, this forum will help to forge closer cooperation between OIC countries, international organizations, as well as institutions. So it's going to be two approaches, as we understand from bottom down that we'll be working at the policy level, and from top down and then bottom up. So we'll be working closely with the individuals and institutions and developing their capacity. This seminar is the first activity of this forum. And of course, we will set aside fund to make sure that this forum is not just an announcement, but also a viable organization which is capable of delivering on the promise. I'm very delighted that you all came and that we would be joined by a very large number of people from some 21, 22 countries of the world, including some finest experts, some great personalities in the field who have dedicated their life for improving the environment where we live in. I'm very happy that this forum is now launched, and you would be seeing many activities. We are actually in the process of developing an action plan for next 5 years, and that we would be able to focus on areas and countries where such activities are needed the most. Thank you very much for your presence here. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we will play you a message from Secretary General OIC, conveyed by Assistant Secretary General S&T OIC.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, let me deliver the message from His Excellency the Secretary General of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, Mr. Taha Ibrahim Hussein. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. World Environment Day 2022, Only One Earth, is an important international day for the environment. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation joins the international community in celebrating this day on June 5 as the World Environment Day. While the whole world is slowly and gradually recovering from the unprecedented challenge from the novel COVID-19 virus, this year's theme, Only One Earth, has now given an opportunity to adopt policies for protecting our Earth from air pollution through adopting the green technologies. The developed countries must cooperate with the least developed countries for encouraging to develop the green technology. Fully conscious of the linkage between environmental sustainability and the development, the OIC attaches high importance to the concerns related to environment, climate change, and protected biodiversity. The first and second OIC summits on science and technology, held in Astana in 2017 and UAE in 2021 respectively, reiterated its stance through its 10 years program, OIC ASEA Agenda 2026, to outline priorities and strategies for addressing the environment sustainability in the OIC member states. The successive meeting of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers in Islamic conferences of ministers of environment also addressed issues related to desertification, water scarcity, and adverse impacts of climate change. At the end, I would like to reiterate the urgency to adopt integrated measures to reduce effects of climate change and natural disasters. Environmental concerns must be incorporated into national strategies for sustainable development. International and regional cooperation needs to be strengthened and expanded in areas of climate change in order to protect the nature for the well-being of our future generations. Thank you very much, and I wish you good work at the conference.
Up next, we have address by Dr. Dechen Sering, Regional Director and Representative for Asia and the Pacific, UN Environment Program, Thailand. You can share your screen now, Dr. Dechen.
Thank you very much. Ms. Saranya Yong will kindly put up the presentation. Excellencies, Ambassador Shahid Kamal, Professor Dr. Iqbal Chowdhury, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to join you at the launching ceremony of the Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration and the Comstac International Seminar on Land Degradation to commemorate World Environment Day. Yesterday was this year's World Environment Day 2022 with Sweden as a global host with the theme Only One Earth, focusing on living sustainably in harmony with nature. May I kindly move to the second slide, please. In 2022, this was a special World Environment Day, since 2022 is a historical milestone for the global environment community. It also marks UNEP at 50. The World Environment Day has become the biggest international day for celebrating the environment, led by the UN Environment Programme and held annually since 1973. This event has grown to become one of the world's largest global platform for environmental outreach, with millions of people from across the world engaging to protect the planet. But unfortunately, all the data shows that we are going in the wrong direction. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, our region, Asia Pacific, is not on track to reach any of the environmental sustainable development goals. So this slogan for this year, Only One Earth, is the same as 50 years ago, and the message is still as valid and important as it was then. Our planet Earth is the only livable planet we have. More than ever, we need to push for transformative actions to reset the balance between people and the natural world to create a better future for all. Next slide, please. Human civilization depends entirely on the silent ecosystem services that nature provides from our economies, our lifestyles to health, well-being, to the basic necessities for our survival. Fresh water, clean air, and a daily food. Yet we have been poor custodians of our fragile home. Today, our Earth is facing a triple planetary crisis: climate disruption, nature and biodiversity loss, pollution, and waste. We're using the equivalent of 1.6 Earths to maintain our current way of life, and our ecosystems cannot keep up with our demand. This triple crisis threatens our well-being and the survival of millions of people around the world. As the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres states, making peace with nature is a defining task of the coming decades. We must seize the opportunity presented by the COVID-19 crisis to accelerate this change. Next slide, please. Land degradation plays a key role in this planetary crisis as the different forms of environmental change are intertwined. Climate change, land degradation, air and water pollution act synergistically to cause systemic damage to biodiversity and ecosystem services on land and in the ocean. Land degradation and transformation contributed around a quarter of the greenhouse gas emissions in the last decade. In turn, climate change and biodiversity loss jeopardize the health and productivity of land. These multiple interactions between environmental problems mean that uncoordinated single-issue solutions are inefficient and likely to fail. In 2020, less than a quarter of the global land surface still functions in a nearly natural way with its biodiversity largely intact. Next slide, please. So if we look at the scientific evidence base, the numbers speak for themselves convincingly, from forests, grasslands, peatland, and croplands to wetlands, rivers, and oceans. All major ecosystems are affected and under threat. Land degradation and its consequences cannot be overlooked anymore. Today, the issue of land degradation is as widely recognized as a global concern, but approaches to addressing it has been inadequate or fragmented. However, there is still hope, and in this decade, we have the chance to shift towards a sustainable future. I want to focus my last slides on ecosystem restoration and what we can achieve together. Next slide, please. On World Environment Day last year, when Pakistan was the global host, the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration was launched with a rallying call to action for people, nature, and climate. This UN Decade is a global movement to stop, prevent, and reverse the degradation of all ecosystems on every continent and in every ocean. Next slide, please. The strategy lays out a vision, the goals, and a theory of change for this decade. The vision is a world where, for the health and well-being of all life on Earth and that of future generations, the relationship between humans and nature has been restored, where the area of healthy ecosystems is increasing and where ecosystem loss, fragmentation, and degradation has ended. Next slide, please. Considering the world today, this might seem like an unreachable vision, but ecosystem restoration can be a game changer for the triple planetary crises. For example, if we restore 15% of converted land while stopping further conversion of natural ecosystems, we can prevent 60% of expected species extinction. And if we restore forests, peatlands, and mangroves, along with other nature solutions, we can provide a third of the greenhouse gas mitigation needed by 2030. And well-designed restoration efforts can provide benefits to all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular to water and food security, to human health, to green jobs, and to climate and biodiversity action. Together with IUCN UNEP estimates that every dollar invested in restoration generates $9 or more in return for society. Next slide, please. So the UN Decade aims at upscaling and replicating restoration efforts, for which it has defined 10 principles for ecosystem restoration. There are 5 task forces bringing together hundreds of organizations established. The science is led by IUCN, financed by the World Bank, best practices by FAO, monitoring by FAO, and the youth have also self-organized. Please do visit the website for more information, news, and for example, the Ecosystem Restoration Playbook, a practical guide to healing the planet. The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration is an opportunity for us to be the first generation to leave the earth for our children and future generations in better health than we have found it. Next slide, please. So if I can summarize some of the key messages regarding restoration. Healthy and productive ecosystems are the basis for our economy and society. Conservation of nature is a fundamental part of our efforts, but we must also actively restore, and we have to act now. This decade will be our game changer. Nature must be an integral part of decarbonization efforts, and nature-based solutions can be considered in this context. We need strong political will and support for transformative change, for example, for repurposing fossil fuel and agriculture subsidies, and there is already a global restoration movement underway. Next slide, please. One example for the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration is the Living Indus initiative. This national restoration initiative was just launched this April jointly by the government of Pakistan and the United Nations. The Indus is a transboundary river basin of South Asia, particularly vulnerable to impacts of climate change through accelerated glacial melting and associated outburst floods. 90% of Pakistani people and more than 3/4 of its economy reside in this basin, and this initiative is supported by the UN agencies, and it aims to restore the health of the Indus Basin through restoration efforts and nature-based solutions, including strengthening and increasing protected areas, restoring terrestrial and aquatic biodiversity, as well as implementing ecosystem-based adaptation approaches, green infrastructure for flood control, and groundwater recharge. The Living Indus initiative is just one example for many national efforts that are being implemented in the region, as well as globally, which underlines that everyone has a role to play in ecosystem restoration, and each one of us can make a difference. Next slide, please. I want to thank Comstac for commemorating this World Environment Day, and I hope that you will join this movement and generation restoration, and I wish you a very successful and inspiring seminar and launch ceremony. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richin, for your presentation. Up next, we have remarks by Dr. Baron Josephore, who is the lead scientist at United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Bonn, Germany. So you may share your screen now. It's visible, you may stop.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the honor of being here and participating in this very important event. Distinguished guests and all the other speakers. I will try to give a global perspective on the issue of land degradation, building off the excellent presentation you've just heard. So, as was mentioned by the ambassador, the Global Land Outlook's second edition was published in May. It coincided with the Conference of the Parties for the UNCCD, which took place in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. And it's clear that we are crossing the planetary boundaries that have been identified by the scientific community, and in particular, climate change, biodiversity loss, land use change, and geochemical cycles. We have to address these together, as was indicated by our Executive Secretary, Ibrahim Jiang. The feedback loops are very clear. So land is clearly a major part of the problem for biodiversity loss and climate change. And our goal is to try and turn that around and make it an integrator and an accelerator. But just how significant of a problem are we talking about? When we are recognizing that 70 to 75% of our ice-free terrestrial ecosystems have been converted from their natural state to human use, we don't have a lot of room to operate for the future needs for food and energy and biodiversity. Governments themselves have reported that at least 1 in 5 of those hectares that have been converted are no longer productive, undermining the well-being for over half the population on Earth. And so if we allow business as usual to continue, the Global Land Outlook projects future degradation the size of South America across the globe. So we're talking about a very limited resource. The bad news is that we're also referring to an enormous impact on global product, 44 trillion US dollars. But as was mentioned before, the economic returns are equally as great if we try and address that land degradation, and we will achieve multiple benefits in the process. In addition, it's important to note that governments around the world have pledged to restore already 1 billion of those degraded hectares. So we basically have 3 scenarios that we can pursue for future land health. Business as usual is clearly unacceptable. Restoration alone will contribute, but if we can combine protecting what we have not degraded so far, sustainably using where we have converted, particularly for agriculture, and then restoring land that is no longer productive, we can actually turn this around. And land can become an integrator and an accelerator of all of our objectives, all of the SDGs. And that is basically what we would call the restoration economy. Pursuing all the SDGs is clearly a good idea, but it's very important to recognize that the SDGs each, in and of itself, compete for land. So it's no longer a situation of fixing degradation where we see it and avoiding it where it hasn't occurred. We have to be far more strategic to navigate these inevitable trade-offs and competing for land resources. So we need a balanced approach, and land degradation neutrality, which is part of the 15th Sustainable Development Goal, Life on Land, provides a mechanism, a framework to consider the trade-offs, anticipate new degradation, and make better decisions with our land. It's something that has been intergovernmentally agreed and addresses the ecological component, the food security component at the same time. It's about maintaining land-based natural capital and the ecosystem services that flow from it, so that by keeping land in balance, we can keep food, water, carbon, energy, biodiversity, et cetera, in balance as well. It's a hierarchy that makes it very clear it's much more important and economically viable to avoid degradation where it has not occurred. But we must recognize that we have to avoid it where it hasn't occurred, reduce the risk of it where we are already using land, and reverse past degradation all at the same time, because these are different places on the landscape. They're not all competing for the same demand. And so we need to be pursuing these strategically all together, which means that land degradation neutrality is about doing the right things in the right places at the right scale. And I would argue with all the right people if we're going to be effective. We call this in the vernacular of the IPCC integrated response options. And it's important to recognize that they need to be pursued in an interlinked way. We can't simply look at the biophysical. We have to look at the value chains that are generated from restoration at the same time. We also have to recognize that not all solutions, if taken to scale, have the same impact. And these redder colors in the next slides will show you where the risk can come in if we're not being very strategic in our approach and ensuring good governance. For agricultural-oriented solutions and ecological restoration and ecosystem management, we have mostly blue, even when taken to scale. But when we look at reforestation and forest restoration taken at scale, you'll realize that we could be competing for food when we're talking about bridging the food gap. The same thing is true with afforestation. And so it's more than planting trees. This is about taking what we have already in the landscape and growing it. Yes, we're going to be planting, but we're going to do it in an ecologically sound way. And we're going to do this in a way that integrates all different ecosystem types, even those that are not natively speaking forests. So if we can work with what we already have, we have a far greater chance of having an impact, and certainly the return on investment is much higher. We have to recognize, therefore, that pursuit of restoration is much more than the biophysical component. We really have to keep in mind, are we actually working in an environment that is firing on all cylinders simultaneously in the same direction? This enabling environment has policy and regulatory components, financial components, institutional components, and the science policy interface, not only at the global level, but country by country. It means that we have to think about our land use planning in an integrated way. We have to secure tenure so that we can do these interventions in a way that's equitable and takes advantage of the 608 million farming families across the world. If we do this and we look at the trade-offs and synergies as we make these land use decisions, our chances of success go up. If we bring in the tenure security component while we align our policies, we have the potential to actually have these stewards working as an army of 608 million farming families. It means that responsible land governance and integrated land use planning are key to balancing environmental, social, and economic goals. And we have the science, as is clear on the left side of this diagram. It's not the issue anymore. And we also have the commitments from countries. We've just heard great detail about the decade on ecosystem restoration. And I want to also point out that the G20 stands behind this with a shared ambition to achieve a 50% reduction in degraded land by 2040. So where are we now? We've heard about the 1 billion hectares, and half of these are land degradation neutrality targets. We're moving in the right direction, and now we've got to turn that into action on the ground. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Barron, for presenting the global perspective on land degradation. Up next, we have our guest speaker, Dr. Deji Madoom, who is a High Representative of the Sahel Coalition. You can share your screen, Dr. Madoom.
Good morning. No, I don't have a slide to put on the screen. I'll just speak to you from my notes.
Sure, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and speakers. Much has already been said with respect to the global landscape. So what I'm going to do is bring you some thoughts with respect to what is happening in the Sahel and West Africa, the region about which I have some limited knowledge. And so putting the whole thing in context, not much can be said after the two speakers in terms of science and knowledge and what is known. If we take a look at the land degradation as referring to the loss of productive capacity of our soils, characterized by loss of soil fertility, biodiversity, and overall deterioration of natural resources, that is known. And what that does is it affects our ability to produce food to meet our basic consumptive needs. That too is known, let alone produce sufficiently to process, value, add, create wealth and jobs. If we do not have sufficient land, then we're not going to be able to do the latter part of the statement. So this takes us to where are we with respect to land degradation in the Sub-Saharan Africa. So I cited a couple of studies, the Agnes Policy Brief of May 2020, which says in Sub-Saharan Africa, approximately 83% of people depend directly on land for survival. For those 78 to 85 to 80% of the continent cultivated area is reportedly degraded with a loss of 30 to 60 kilos of nutrients per hectare per year. Now, available estimates show that land degradation affects nearly 46% of Africa's land areas, with at least 485 million people affected, translating for Sub-Saharan Africa to a loss of 9.3 billion annual USD annual. Not only the land, but the rivers are also affected. It's been reported that 78 to 86% of the basins of the Orange, Niger, and Nile rivers and Lake Chad Basin experience high to very high land degradation. And naturally, in other countries, Kenya, it's been reported land degradation increasing in severity and extent in many areas, 20% of all cultivated land areas, 30% of forest, and 10% of grassland are subject to degradation, and many more in Burundi, Rwanda, Burkina Faso, Lesotho, and the list goes on and on and on. And so this means that the rates and extent of land degradation undermine and pose a serious threat to livelihoods of millions of people in Africa struggling to edge out of poverty. So where do we go with this? And their impacts in Sub-Saharan Africa. According to the 2022 report, The State of Food and nutrition in the world. More than half of the world undernourished are in Asia, 418 million people. More than a third, 282 million people in Africa. And consequently, the situation worsened in 2020 compared to 2019, naturally due to COVID and other ailments. With respect to children, more children live under malnutrition in Africa and Asia, and account for 9 out of 10 children with stunting. And given these trends, the world is unlikely to achieve the target for nutrition indicators. Now, recently, as of May 6, I attended the OECD conference, what they call the RPCA, le réseau de prévention des crises alimentaires, where everybody and his grandpa and grandma meet in OECD in Paris and discuss the state of the world in terms of food and nutrition. For Sahel and West Africa, 23.7 million people are under pressure, food insufficiency. If not much can be done between now and August, those numbers become 38.3 million people to be affected. And so the picture I painted so far, it really doesn't give us hope. But the scientists who presented before me, and I'm sure those who are going to be presenting later definitely have the science and technology that should help us to reverse the trend if we get serious. Now, if we don't get serious, then we will self-extinguishing. So it doesn't matter how many people came and left, and so we too will disappear. So in my capacity as a high representative of the coalition made up of 50 to 60 countries and organizations, I'm going to emphasize a few things. That we need to mobilize Saheli and West African countries and their partners to tackle the drivers of land degradation in food and nutrition insecurity. Why? Because we still have, and if we talk about Sahel and West Africa, there is a land. Yes, some land is degraded. When I was working with fossils for 7.5 years, and back then I was the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation in Chad, we have the knowledge and science to restore degraded land. So we can bring land back to productive capacity, as the scientists before me said. So we need to, I need to mobilize with all of you, all of us, and we need to invest sustainably using the concepts that have been proven so far, sustainable land management, manage sustainably, what have you, invest in local production systems. I want to open just a couple of key points here that nowadays in Sahel and West Africa, everybody's saying, well, the hell that's breaking loose in Ukraine has made life unbearable because we don't have access to food. No. Long before Russia invaded Ukraine, we did not do what it takes to produce locally, to modernize the production systems, to produce food locally. So that's not an excuse, and it shows the extent to which, if we don't get serious, we're going to be having some very dire consequences. So it's also a time with respect to this situation, the Sahel and West Africa, to take matters in their own hands, because there is an international community willing to help. And yes, indeed, given the opportunities that exist for good policy making, good governance, good private sector engagement, I think the opportunity exists and we need to seize them. And why is all of that? It's because everybody noticed the dramatic food insecurity issues that emerged. And it is very painful because roughly right now, Africa produces about 45% of its food, and that's no good, which means that, in fact, 1 out of 4 Sahelians is already dependent on food help from outside. That too is not good. We cannot let that continue. And it is more worrisome because if you take what I've said so far and put it back into land degradation, the loss of biodiversity, soil, water erosion, what have you, given the fact that population might double if we reach 2045, then we have some serious issues. These factors are understood, these factors are known. What needs to be is you take the knowledge, existing knowledge, scale it up and out, and we should be able to be happily managing our ecosystems, protect our land so it can provide opportunities for us to keep moving and living. So for Africa, the Sahel and West Africa, within 25 years, the population will double. So if we have issues now, just think about what will happen when we move forward and double that population. With respect to climate change, severe disturbances, and the scientists agree that if we let climate temperature rise by 1 degree Celsius, then naturally crop production and productivity will drop by at least 50%. These are very conservative estimates. More worrisome scenarios have also been mentioned. So, and that too, in Sahel and West Africa, more land degrades, more people scramble for survival, more havoc will be created because people move from degraded areas and go into new areas, and land carrying capacity becomes an issue. You guys are all scientists, policymakers, you know all of this. No need to go further into it because the time has come. We need to get very busy and create opportunities. And then a set of responses exist. Despite all of this, we can do much better. Let's just get serious, get busy. So in terms of rural areas, we can invest. We know that 60 to 70% of mom and pop live in rural areas, depending on production systems that are still of subsistence. And you know very well, like me, that we cannot manage sustainably if we are surviving barely on land that is not capable of producing sufficiently to meet our basic consumptive needs. So we need to invest, we need to modernize, we need to modernize those production systems, create wealth and jobs whereby our graduates, our mama and papa and young girls all get opportunities to make a decent living. We need to transform, we need to create wealth. And naturally, we have the likes of the green wall, which can be tapped into and do a lot more. Plan, restore, and manage sustainably. And of course, we need to create jobs. And to create jobs and wealth, we need to look at the markets. Where are they? In Sahel and West Africa, you cannot continue marketing your products or sending them out, raw materials. You need to transform, and you'll be able to go from one country to another so that the cross-border issues will no longer become an impediment to good commerce. Commerce in intra-regionally to up to 15% is no good. You need to at least move up to 25 to 30% to be able to take goods, make goods and services flow freely. Because if that happens, then we're not going to import frozen food from Brazil somewhere, bring a chicken from elsewhere and so on and so forth. We can produce it locally, biosafety and so on and so forth, and be a lot happier and healthier. So the opportunities will need to be given to youth, women, and girls, and we need to address these issues. Put the whole thing, everything that I've said and that will be said needs some good governance. Without good governance, we're not going to be able to make much progress. We need to move away from corruption, develop entrepreneurship, freedom to create an environment in which youth will secure decent employment opportunities. Otherwise, youth will become engaged in bad activities, terrorism and the likes, banditry. That too is not good. We need to restore very swiftly democratic rules, the rule of law, so that we can really engage in socioeconomic development. Does this give us hope? Yes, it gives us hope, because enough is enough. We need to get busy. And so we have the knowledge, we have the science, we have the coalition of the willing. This meeting today is part of that big movement, and we'll certainly be more than happy to join forces so we can reverse certainly the trend at the local level as well as at the global level. And to conclude, all of this is part of the pledge I tried to bring to the policymakers in the Sahel and West Africa, regional organizations, and to the international community beyond the coalition partner. And may the force be with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Madoom. This marks the end of the inaugural session for today. I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers for their talks on the commemoration of this very important World Environment Day. With this, we'll now move on to the Comstac International, moderated by Dr. Abdul Majid. I will give a brief introduction of Dr. Abdul Majid. He's a country manager of International Center for Agriculture Research in the Dry Areas, ICARDA, in Pakistan. He has over 30 years of professional experience in management and research positions. This includes private sector, federal and provincial governments. During his professional career, he has worked on many positions in agriculture research and development. He initiated farming systems research program in the country in collaboration with provincial institutions. At present, Dr. Abdul Majid is working on water management, soil fertility, soil health of cotton, wheat system projects in different areas of Pakistan. Over to you, Dr. Abdul Majid.
Thank you very much for my introduction. We'll start the session straight away on land degradation. First of all, I'd like to invite Professor Dr. Ayman Abu Hadid. He is based working at Arid Land Agriculture Studies and Research Institution, Faculty of Agriculture, and Shams University at Cairo, Egypt. He has worked on many important positions in the past. Particularly has been Minister of Agriculture in 4 cabinets. In addition to that, he has been also worked at the Center Chairman of Egyptian Union of Producers and Exporters of Horticulture Crops and Executive President of Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. I like to invite him. His title of presentation is Land Degradation Threats and Promises in Egypt. Professor Dr. Ayman Abu Hadid, please.
Well, thank you very much for the kind invitation and for also the kind introduction. I wonder if you can see my presentation on screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Well, start with actually the types of agriculture worldwide range between industrial agriculture, plantation, traditional sustainable agriculture, and traditional intensive agriculture. And this is the situation in Egypt. The agriculture is actually a range of intensive traditional agriculture, especially in the Nile Valley. The rest of Egypt are actually desert and are not used in agriculture, except for some little areas close to the Mediterranean coast. The reason for land erosion and land degradation are numerous. The known ones are wind, water, and also farming systems. But adding to these are human developmental activities, which are now posing substantial threat for agricultural lands. Egypt in general is out of the range of areas of serious concerns for land degradation. And it is only either stable or non-affected by natural land degradation activities. But in the same time, the area subjected to natural land degradation in Egypt and also for drought are not exceeding 1.1% of agricultural land. So the other factors affecting this started with the climate change issue and the sea level rise, which actually posed another threat to areas of agriculture closer to the Mediterranean coast in the north of Egypt. The rise of water caused either submersion of some agricultural land or salinization, which prevented the land from being productive. On the other hand, Alexandria, for example, together with Cairo and other major cities in Egypt, are expanding, and the urban expansion are actually resulting in getting large area of agriculture out of production and out of
screen share नहीं आ रही।
I think you are muted, so would you please unmute yourself?
I think Professor Hadid just disconnected, so we'll give it a couple of minutes for him to reconnect and share his screen.
Now I'm already again in connection, all right?
Yes, sir, you're visible.
Yeah, I'm sorry for this technical issue. So maybe I start from this slide again.
Can you share your screen again?
Oh, yes, definitely, yes. All right.
Yes, sir, it's visible. You can go ahead now.
Okay. So the large area of the coastal area close to the Mediterranean are sunk under water due to the sea level rise phenomena. Efforts were made to protect these coasts from the sea level rise. The concepts of sustainable land management are very well known, and the pillars of continuous and sustainable agricultural development are known. One of the most important issues I want to put forward here is the per capita water share in Egypt, which is with the start of the 20th century, it was 5,000 cubic meter per capita. Nowadays, it is a little bit less than 500 cubic meter per capita. So there is a severe reduction in the per capita water share in the country. And I think one of the directions that we made to improve the situation is to adopt the protected agriculture concept, especially with using solar energy for operation. Protected agriculture will produce more crops per drop and will also utilize less amount of water for producing the some of the commodities. So protected agriculture for vegetable crops will allow to save water and to save some lands for other agricultural crops. And also rainwater harvesting from the top of the greenhouses allow the utilization of soilless culture for producing fruits of high value that can support the farmer and producing more intensively using the limited amount of water. Of course, the construction of the national program for protected agriculture, which is covering an area of 100,000 acres, is a very ambitious program which have already started now. Also, the use of protected agriculture to produce fodder instead of producing the green fodder for animal production in the open will save a lot of water and will help in protecting the land from degradation and from low productivity. By this, I thank you for attention. The time is not allowing for more details, but I think I gave you some ideas about land degradation in Egypt and the ways to protect it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abu Hadi. Our next speaker is Dr. Rajal Pradhan. He is the lead author of IPCC Special Report on Climate Change and Land Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Center Research in Germany. He is also quite a bit of experience on climate change, sustainable development goals in the country, and also expert on food system emissions and food security. His talk is on systemic transformation of food systems to address land degradation and climate change. Dr. Pradhan, please. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon your location. It is my, yeah. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. We can see.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us?
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I can. Thank you very much. Yeah, hello, everybody. Yeah, so today I will be sharing some of the key findings of IPCC Special Report on Climate Change and Land, mostly focusing on land degradation issue, but linking that to the food systems. And as we know that this special report was was published in year 2019. Yeah, and this special report is about, even though in short we call it climate change and land report, it has several components like climate change, desertification, land degradation, sustainable land management, food security, and greenhouse gas fluxes in terrestrial ecosystems. And here today, I would be highlighting some of the key result of this report or findings of this report in terms of land issues. When we talk about land, we as a human, as a terrestrial being, land is where we live. But the way we are using land is also under pressure. The land is undergoing human pressure because of our land use. However, what we need to understand is like, even though the land is under pressure, what we need to understand here is like land could be a part of the solution to mitigate this pressure. But at the meantime, one of the key message coming out of this report is like land cannot do it all. We cannot solve all the problem related to sustainability, related to climate change only by our land, even though it is a part of the solution. What we need to consider here is like land is a critical resources. We rely on it for food, water, health, and well-being. But it is already undergoing human pressure, mainly because we are using land a lot. Yeah, so around 1/3 of land is directly used by human. Yeah, and on the top of our current land use practices, climate change is adding additional pressure to these pressure. For example, agriculture, food products, and deforestation are major driver of climate change. So when we talk about our food systems, 1/3 of global anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions comes from food system, and around 23% of global anthropogenic greenhouse gas comes from agriculture, mainly related to food production and deforestation activities. So the way we are using land is also causing problem, mainly leading to climate change. On the top of that, the climate change is also making a situation worse. For example, changing climates is undermining food security, but in terms of land use, climate change is also leading to land degradation and deforestation. So there is, as we already heard from previous speaker, there is this feedback loop between how we are using land and how the outcome of our unsustainable land use is further degrading our land and also jeopardizing or worsening our food security situation. However, as I mentioned before, land is definitely a part of solution. So when we talk about the way we are using land, we have to think about coordinating actions which could tackle climate change and simultaneously improve land, food security, nutrition, and these actions also help to eat hunger. So land is part of solution, but what to make this as a part of our solution, we have to go for coordinated action. And here, some of this result has already been findings has already been shown in today's session. In the previous session, and here what we can see here is like there are various response options that are available throughout the food systems, either it via sustainable land management, land and water management options, or there are options related to value chain management, both on supply and demand side, or it could be management option for risks here. I would not go too much detail on options on land management because we already heard from previous speaker that there are so many options that could be used to sustainably manage our land, including achieving land neutrality. Here, I would like to focus one more issue. Definitely, way we produce our food matters. However, our dietary choice also can help reduce emissions and pressure on land. So it's not only the way we produce food, how we consume food also matters when we talk about mitigating climate change and reducing pressure on land. And also it is also linked to human health issue. For example, consuming sustainable and healthy diet helps to mitigate climate change, reduce pressure on land, and at the meantime improve human health. Similarly, reducing or avoiding food loss and food waste also reduce our pressure on our land, because we need to produce less food if we don't waste or waste our food. So here what we can see here is like these options, like changing dietary habits. Here, changing dietary habits towards more sustainable and healthy diet. That means to have a low amount of animal source food like red meat, dairy product, and also low amount of sugar, sweeteners, limited amount of oil, fats, but increased amount of fruits and vegetables, fresh fruits and vegetables, coarse grain. And in terms of South Asia, I would say like limited amount of cereals consumption, because when you look at South Asian diets, there is a higher amount of consumption of carbohydrate coming from cereals. This will definitely help to reduce our pressure on land and the water use, and definitely it could also help to avoid land degradation here. So consuming more healthier diet, more fruits and vegetables, adequate amount of carbohydrate, but not excess amount of carbohydrate, and also here limited amount of animal source food will help to reduce pressure on land. And definitely there are issues like reducing food loss and food loss and food waste. So at the end, what I would like to highlight here is like land that we are already using could feed the world in changing climate and providing biomass for renewable energy. So land is a part of solution, but for that we need to action across several fronts. And one of the key remark here is like the climate change that is mainly caused by burning of fossil energy first need to be solved by stopping using of fossil energy. And at the meantime, there are different response options throughout food systems, including land management, which could be deployed for climate change adaptation, mitigation, with other co-benefits in terms of livelihood, in terms of biodiversity, and in terms of human health. So saying that, I would like to thank you very much for this invitation, and I'm happy to discuss you or answer the question via email or via other channels. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Paradhan. Thank you. Now the next speaker is Dr. Dolly Priyatna. He is the Executive Director of Baltazar Foundation, Jakarta, Indonesia. Dr. Dolly has quite a bit of experience in writing many specific papers for both national and international journals, chapter contributor in environmental books, as well as books co-edited on restoration of strategy and techniques in various forest ecosystems. The title of presentation is Multi-Stakeholder Effort to Reduce Peatland Degradation in Jamsiak, Phuket, Batu Biosphere Reserve, Rio, Indonesia. I would like to request Priyatna to present the paper, please.
Thank you, Dr. Majid. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yes. Is my presentation appears from your screen?
Yes, we see it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Excellencies Ambassador Shahid Kamal, distinguished guests, and the other speakers, good morning and good afternoon, I guess. So I'm honored to be here at the very important event. Thank you for inviting me. So before I explaining about our study in UNESCO Biosphere Reserve in Sumatra, Indonesia, so I would like to introduce Belantara Foundation. So the foundation is an Indonesian-based non-profit organization that works to protect the Indonesian landscape by establishing local sustainability projects in areas which are set aside for conservation, reforestation, and sustainable community development. So this is our vision: sustainable landscape for communities' harmonious and prosperous life, with the mission supporting sustainable landscape management to achieve a balance between long-term economic development, improving local communities' livelihoods, and protecting the environment. So this is our working areas within 10 landscapes, while 8 in Sumatra Islands and 2 in Indonesian Borneo of Indonesia. So we primarily focus to support restoration, protection, conservation of endangered species, institutional development and community development, as well as empowerment initiatives in conservation areas, production forest, protection forest, and social forestry in 10 landscape across 5 provinces in the island of Sumatra and Kalimantan. Kalimantan is an Indonesian Borneo. So as you may all aware that forest landscape, the government of Indonesia really rely on the forests to tackle the climate crisis in the countries. So the government has claimed more success in reducing the loss of Indonesia's forest area, with recent data showing that last year deforestation rate was the lowest within the 5 years periods. So our Ministry of Environment and Forestry recorded a loss up to more than 100,000 hectares of forest due to deforestation from between 2019 and 2020. So this numbers is 75% lower than the previous figure, which is we have lost more than 400,000 hectares in 2019 and 18. So and more than 400,000 hectares in between 2017 and 2018. So this data taken from the source of the data is the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So you can see the figures in the right side of the slides. Yeah, so you can see the decrease of the forest loss in the countries. So at the national level, a lot of policies and regulations. So the government action has played a strong role that has reduced deforestation rate in the country. So a moratorium policy that bans clearing of primary forest and peatland. So the moratorium, which covers around 66 million hectares of forest land, or equal to 254 something square miles of primary forest and peatland, was first introduced in 2011, and it has been made permanently since 2019 as part of the effort of the government to reduce emission from fire caused by deforestation. So the other national policies, so the government also strengthened the law enforcement to prevent forest fires and land clearing through the presidential instruction in 2015. So also the effort to restore around 2.4 million hectares of degraded peatland and mangroves. This is mandated by presidential regulation in 2016. Also helped to reduce peatland fires and so that deforestation can be minimized. So in 2015, also the government of Indonesia launched social forestry programs, which is a new scheme that allow a group of local community to manage the forest land. Yeah. So this is the program is one of the economic equality policies enacted by our president of Mr. Joko Widodo. So the program has an ambitious target of providing communities with legal access to 12.7 million hectares of state forest, allowing them to manage these resources sustainably for their own livelihoods and for the forest protections. So back to our study case. So we measure the deforestation rate within UNESCO's Biosphere Reserve of Diam Siak Kecil Bukit Batu in Riau Province. If you can see on the left top corner, yeah, the Biosphere Reserve is in Riau Province in central Sumatra. So consists of core areas. Core areas mean the conservation areas. This is around 178,000 hectares, or 25% from the area. And the buffer zone around 222,000 hectares, or equal to 32% of the area. The buffer zones consists mostly the production forest managed by wood concessions. So while transition areas, or 43% of the area, around 300,000 hectares, it lies on the agriculture land, yeah. So settlements, plantation, etc. So this biosphere reserve is the first biosphere reserve in the world that has been initiated and co-managed by the private.
Please to conclude.
Yes, this is Diam Siak Kecil. So deforestation caused by encroachment, illegal logging, forest fire, etc. So this is what I would like to explain is with several interventions, so deforestation can be reduced. Yeah. So a lot of initiatives from the sustainable commodities, sustainable woods, etc. So the conclusion is, so what we can learn from this, Indonesia's rate of primary forest loss decreased over the last 5 years, and a number of initiatives and policies appear to have substantial impact to deforestation rate and to support more sustainable natural resources management in national and local levels. So the implementation from those policies and regulation are more impactful due to commitment of multi-stakeholders in the landscape, as well as collaborative implementation from all stakeholders. So choosing the ideal model intervention for implementing sustainable approach to reduce forest loss is crucial, especially in local level. Adaptive, persuasive, and inclusive approach are needed to answer local problems. Thank you very much. Return to you, Dr. Majid.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Our next speaker is Dr. Luma Hamdi. She is expert in environmental modeling and consultant in a project for environmental alternatives company Amman in Jordan. The title of presentation is Crop and Agroforestry Modeling. For this, I like to request Dr. Luma Hamdi to kindly present.
I think that you are mute.
Who's mute?
Dr. Luma, please unmute yourself.
Yes, could you hear me, please?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First, thanks for giving me the opportunity to participate in this seminar and talking about the crop and agroforestry modeling as an essential or promising, let's say, promising method for mitigating land degradation. First, talking about agroforestry, it is a system integrates tree growing and the crop cultivation or animal productions on the same land management based on a spatial and temporal sequence. Those are different examples of agroforestry here with the cattle, a tree, and the harvested maize crop. Here with an acacia tree with the plowed crop, cereal crop. We have also some types of agroforestry can be implemented by using different types of trees in a cropland, and here with the mature acacia used also applied in a cropland. Most of those examples in Africa. So we have generally, if we want to talk about the benefits of agroforestry, to preserve natural ecosystems, mitigate climate change, promote biodiversity through the incorporations of different species of plants, crops, which may provide homes of various wildlands, promote economic resilience, improve household food security, and conserve soil moisture, enhance soil health, and mitigate salinization. This figure shows the interactions between tree species, agricultural crop, and livestock for soil fertility enhancement, carbon sequestration, biodiversity conservation, and improving climate, also regulation of water and air. So this table shows the different examples of or practices of agroforestry that can be applied according to the different regions in the world. We have silvorable trees and intercropped with annual or perennial crops, silvopastoral, combining the trees with forage and animal production. Usually those examples of agroforestry are applied in arid and semi-arid regions. We have agro-silvopastoral, combining the trees with the annual crops and animal productions. Multi-purpose trees, fruit, and other trees are planted in a cropland or pasture for the purpose of providing fruit, fuel wood, fodder, and timber. Riparian buffer strips of perennial vegetation, natural or planted between croplands. We have also an approved fallow. Those examples can be seen here. The first are alley cropping. Also, we have agroforestry when the trees act as a windbreaks. figure C shows the riparian forest buffers, D silvopasture, E forest farming. This a little bit complicated flowchart shows how the importance of converting from monocrops to multi-cropping, including agroforestry. Let's focus on the colored boxes here. When we are changing farming system from monoculture to multi-cropping or agroforestry, we are changing the water availability, we are improving the soil. There is a change in the interactions between biotic and abiotic factors and the interactions between trees and the crops. This will lead to a livelihood and social benefits. We have also changes in climate conditions, in wind patterns, which affect energy balance and radiation. This will have an effect on evaporation and heat convection. And so those all interactions are very important to study and well understood, should be well understood for understanding the agroforestry system. Although we have the challenges in implementing agroforestry, like high cost for implementation, lack of financial incentive, and limited agroforestry systems, the product marketing, lack of education, awareness, and field demonstrations, which is considered an important factor, or let's say it is a big challenge to convince farmers and farm owners to use or apply agroforestry in their farms. Here is a table from USDA that could help to choose the best agroforestry practice according to the risk in different regions. For example, when we have intense precipitation events, this means we have to slow water runoff to reduce the flooding. This can be done by using riparian forest buffers and alley cropping. While increased temperatures, like in arid and semi-arid regions, we need to reduce heat stress or on animals by providing shade by silvopasture agroforestry. Other factors increase the frequency and intensity of droughts by wind breaks, increase from storm intensity by using wind breaks and alley cropping, changes in the growing seasons due to temperature and precipitations by applying maybe wind breaks, alley cropping and forest farmings, winter storms and cold temperatures by silvopastures and wind breaks, increased insects and disease problems by wind breaks, riparian forest buffers, alley cropping, increased possibility of the crops failure due to other risks. In this case, we need to all types of agroforestry practices can be applied. Although we have those tables are provided worldwide, but still we need to understand the system and to accurately choose the right crops that could interact with the right trees without any negatively effect that could affect the farmers and farm owners negatively. So using crop models is the best alternative. Usually crop models, we are talking here about process-based models, those mechanistic models that contains more than one module in a one model, which use let's say modular modeling approach. Those crop models usually they are restricted to monoculture, where interactions between the plants are limited to resource partitioning between individuals of the same species. Many of the crop models like DSAT and ABSEMS that are used worldwide have successfully simulate different crops, but in a monoculture system. Using those crop models in like DSAT and ABSEM, in order to use them, we need minimum input data, like soil data, like water lower limit and water upper limit, cation exchange capacity. We need some experimental data or management. Experimental data related to the sowing date, let's say irrigation method, amount of water applied, fertilization dates and types. Also, we have to know more about the genetics and the cultivar that we are going to use. Whether data is so important in order to simulate, to run the model perfectly or in a good way. Whether data usually in DSAT and ABSIM is needed in a daily process, like minimum temperature, maximum temperature, daily solar radiations, and daily precipitation. All these inputs, they should be inserted by the users to the cropping system model in order to get the final yield, which is most important usually for farmers and farm owners. Also, we could follow temporally and especially the changes in above ground biomass and all other phenotypic, let's say, changes of the crop. Here, also some models could simulate some environmental and economic benefits. So we need to integrate agroforestry, or let's say research.
Can you please conclude your talk?
What?
Please conclude your talk. Finish your talk as soon as possible. Please, Please go ahead.
Okay. Actually, in modeling agroforestry, yeah, okay. This is how the interactions between the tree, crop, and the environment should be studied. As we said, the model complexity here is should be moderately used, not very high complex or low complex model. Here are different types of agroforestry models. Mainly the ABSIM next generation is widely used worldwide. As we have here the modeling tree crop interactions that might have a negatively and positively effects. Negatively through competition for light nutrients and water, and positively through increased input of biomass from leaves and roots that often enhance nutrient cycling. And the challenging in using agroforestry models in field and farm scales, the complex spatial and temporal domains, high variability in field farm scale, and the tree density that vary between single trees in large fields and densely planted wood lots. Okay, the problem here is the wide range of possible arrangement of the trees and the crops encountered in agroforestry systems requires a flexible approach to modeling and a more disaggregated spatial domain. In this case, this is the problem of the long life cycles. We have different zones and we cannot simulate agroforestry continuously like doing in monoculture. And so, as we said, for studying agroforestry models, we have competition and complementary. This is why it is important to use the models to choose the best crops and best trees. We should consider the niche differentiations between crops and trees.
Excuse me, Dr. Uma. Excuse me, please. Can you please finish your talk, because we are running out of time. We are over 10 minutes now. Please do that.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the agroforestry yield buffering. The simulations of agroforestry could be done even by using, regardless the type of the trees, but by representations of radiations interceptions, microclimate temperature regulations, and fertilization effects. In this study, the result shows the major role of agroforestry in decreasing radiations and decreasing maximum and minimum temperature, and also increasing the yield for different climate change scenarios by 10% for the RCP 2.6 and also reduce maize yield losses by 4.2 for RCP 8.5. We have a 20% shade will reduce maize yield losses by 11.5%. This study is important because it is applied by using ABSIM new generation more than one time, more than one simulation, one by changing the shade, radiation, and others by changing the amount of the nutrient cycle. So just I'm going to talk about the limitations. We have current simulations of agroforestry is limited in numbers and arrangements of trees in field, and there are currently no clear approaches to integrate agroforestry tree crop interactions in the process-based crops for large scale, usually only for field and farms, not for national, international, or regional scales. The recommendations that we need further studies for high variations of the trees and the interactions between trees and soil and water below ground, especially in the root zone. We need to focus on modeling agroforestry in arid and semi-arid regions. They are very important, although there is very little studies and researches about agroforestry in arid regions. We need to lower the number of parameters that must be determined by users to run the model and to select those that can be easily measured. We are looking for friendly user agroforestry models that can be flexible and applied to different trees and the crops for all regions in a wide scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Luma. So our next presenter is Dr. Abdul Majid, Country Manager, ICADA, Pakistan. The talk title is Adoption of Land and Water Management Technologies by Using Agriculture Service Providers in Pakistan.
Thank you very much. I like to appreciate and really acknowledge and thankful to the management for providing me opportunity to attend this seminar. My topic is adoption of land and water management technologies using agriculture service providers. It was stuck over. Okay, I think, sorry for inconvenience. We were stuck in a system. I just want to say that ICARD, international organization where I belong to for the last 20 years, it works more than 40 countries in the world. And also including most of the areas which we have been discussing today. Next one is ICARD research program. Just briefly, we work on climate change, smart crops. We work on sustainable land, soil, and water management. We also on resilience crop livestock systems. So there are three areas we work. Generally, land degradation, I don't want to go more into details because a lot of has been already talked about it. So I will move to next slide. I just like to share with you some of the work which we have done for the last 5 years, 6 years on actually technologies which we tested and evaluated and transferred to farmers, farming communities, practical work at village level, at farmer level, in Pakistan, some of the areas of Pakistan. So some of these technologies are displayed. So we are talking about irrigation systems, micro catchments, structures for control water and erosion, soil erosion. We are gully plugging and spillways, gypsum application, biozone, rice residue management in irrigated areas, banana residues, and also, of course, green manuring to improve land degradation and soil fertility. So I am not going to discuss everything, it will take a lot of time. I'll just take few examples to show you, illustrate you what has been better, what has been done. As you can see, we just started with evaluating technologies from many in Pakistan, and one of them were biozone. And you can see also the gypsum, zero tillage, and also park cedar kind of thing. And you can see when we compared it with farming community traditional systems, we can see there were a lot of improvement, not only in soil fertility and also soil degradation, maintenance and improvement, but also increase in production. Farmer will never adopt the technology if he doesn't fulfill his pocket. So if he gets something in his pocket, he will take on those technologies. Then you can see some of the examples, how we did it, or we use the scarce water of rainfall in different areas of Pakistan. These few examples are from Balochistan and also from Punjab, some of the areas, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. As you can see, how water is diverted towards the tree to get maximum benefit out of that water. Similarly, you can see demonstration sites for Chakwal districts. This is also a medium rainfall area where a lot of erosion take place. You lose the land, you lose the water. And there we try to really work at village level, at farm level. Here you can see many technologies we have done there, and to improve really to regenerate the soil in some area, degraded land, and also other aspects. Similarly, you can see demonstration of water saving techniques. Normally, we put very expensive structures, but through ICARD and the help of the collaborating institution, we put very cheap structures which cost almost 5 to 10 times less than traditional structures which are installed at farmer field on subsidy level. As you can see, some of them are really just made of stones, and they do the same work perfectly. And farmer can really save a lot of money. And that thing is moving very nicely in some of the areas where there is a lot of erosion of water. You can save water, you can save your soils from eroding from one field to the other, and eventually end up in the rivers. Then we have again demonstrations, same thing in details. As you can see over here, one of the slide, as you can see here, you can save even 25% increase maize production, and you can save your water and your soil erosion. So similarly, on other areas, you can see same kind of things we are trying to do. Then the demonstration of gypsum. Gypsum is normally used for salinity, but we are using that for moisture conservation in rain-fed areas. It has given a lot of improvement in production. Whenever rain comes, it saves the water, store keep in the soil. When you plant a crop, you get benefit out of that. And then we have the whole, kind of system, how to deliver, how to get the gypsum up to farmers. So whole value chain we have done there. Similarly, Biozot is it fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere and keep into the soil. It improves the really soil degradation, because a lot of our soils are very deficient in nutrition, as you know. That's where we're getting very low productivity, and they are depleting day by day. And you can see from this, we can improve not only the soil fertility, but also we can improve the production. This whole thing has also gone into a system. There's a private sector now into it, and they are selling and buying for the farmers and reaching to the farmers. Then we have a very important topic is also a lot of burning take place in rice before wheat is planted, any other crop is planted. And the farmer normally burn and really deteriorate the environments. And the temperature goes high, and it's a big risk, not only for crops, but also for livestock and others. Traffic, all those things are happening. So we have a drill which can really plant. We don't have to put on fire. You don't have to remove. You just harvest the crop and drill the wheat into it. And you can save time, you can increase production, and that residue will really restore your soil fertility a lot. And it helps to improve the land degradation quite a bit. A lot of the data which we have is on microbiology, particularly a lot of microbes are saved because of burning. So yields are improved, microbes are better, and also the other aspects because of residues, they also contain a lot of organic matter. Your soil will get much better there. Then you can see building of capacity building, how this whole thing happens to reach to the farmer. Because small farmers who are basically don't adopt those technologies, they are 70% in the country, in Pakistan. Same as in many other countries, Africa and here and there. So if you have people living in those villages, you train them well, not only in terms of technologies, but also in business and entrepreneurship, they will do the job. That's what we did with them. We trained them. We really helped them in business, how to do the business in those villages, and they have done pretty good job in those areas. As you can see, we are training them. As a result of that, we are trying to help the extension government to reach to the farmers really with these service providers. So this is one of the things which we have done in Pakistan, was never really done. Traditionally, it was there. So these ASPs are then linked with all the stakeholders, with industry, with here and there, because new technologies come, new machines come, they elevate themselves and really hire more people and generate employment also. As you can see, the impact of those people after 1 year training, we have seen a lot of technologies has been adopted by the farmer, looking at their demonstration, looking at them, because they provide us in the villages those services. And you can see they also service provider provision by the ISPs in different technologies. I'm not presenting all of them. Some of them are very highly adopted. Depending if they are cheaper, they will be adopted very quickly. We can bring fancy technologies. If farmers are not happy with that, if they are expensive, they will not use it. Then you can see these people who provide the services, they are not employed of anyone. They raise income. They really are employees of themselves, and they are well respected in the village. They raise their own production and raise the production of other farmers. Then policy changes we have to bring them. In national policy, we try to train the youth who are graduate, who are from villages. They can get these trainings and help the farmers and help for employment. Also, Biozot is production is going on a large scale now. We are in the whole province, even importing to Sindh now, and this technology is moving ahead. Then zero-tillage drill, happy seeder is also included in the government policies, and government is providing subsidies now, particularly the Punjab government, and they are really using this technology on a large scale. I don't want to take you more time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Majid.
Thank you very much. Now, our next speaker is Miss Jacqueline Mendowa. She works as Research and Development Specialist at Tanzania Industrial Research and Development Organization at Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So she has also quite a bit of experience in different fields, has been working in research and development areas. Her talk is Achieving Land Degradation Neutrality in Tanzania. I'd like to request her to make her presentation. Are you there, Ms. Jacqueline? Okay.
Ms. Jacqueline, please share your screen. Unmute yourself.
She's not there. No. Are you there, Ms. Jacqueline? I think in the meantime, I think we can go to the next speaker, and we can allow her after this one presentation. Our next speaker is Professor Siham bin Abdullah, works at Center of Water Research Technologies, Burj Sadriya as Science and Technology Park, Tunisia. So she has a wide range of experience. She is a very active member of a civil society, as a member of 2 local associations on water for development, research and action, and founding members of Tunisian chapter for hydrology under the International Association of Hydrologists. I would like to request her to please make a presentation on the title given to us is on degraded landscape in Tunisia and means of water and soil conservation. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the invitation. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sure. Thank you for this invitation to join all these wonderful speakers about landscapes and land degradation. Let me just quickly say that Tunisia is located in North African country, maybe because we have so many participants from all over the world, and we are that small country in green there, located between Algeria and Libya. And also we are in the front of the Mediterranean Sea, which we'll see later on some of the impacts there. Some key facts about Tunisia, it's that it has some contrasting landforms because it goes from the mountainous area to the sea level in the northern part. The highest peak is in the Atlas Mountains, about 1,500 meters, and with an average altitude of 235. but a large part of the country is the Sahara, which is located in the southern part. We only have one permanent river, which is the Majerda River, located in the northern part. And principal nature is arable soils within almost a big part of the country. Here, I would like to share with you some of the landforms. So we see the wide varieties of landforms that we have, some the extreme north where it's all green, mostly used for agriculture, to the central east part where it gets drier more and no permanent rivers, mostly Wadi's river, to the southern part where we have oases and desert type of land. So several challenges there.
Excuse me, do you have your slides, or we don't see those? Are you just speaking without slides?
No, I'm sharing my slides.
Okay, okay. You're on the first slide, yeah? On the first slide.
Did you see that, or is it
No,
shared?
we can't see. We can see only title.
It's not going through there.
Yes, coming now. Yes, there now.
There now. I will leave it that way so that you see it. I was in a full screen type of. Okay. There's the landforms that I was talking about. Very different landforms from the northern part to the southern part of the country. This varieties of landform gives us basically many challenges of land degradation, where soil erosion rate is really high, and it affects 50% of the total area of the country. Climate varies from really arid in the south to the semi-arid in the center to sub-humid in the northern part, but with 77% of the area under arid region. So desertification becomes then one of the major problems, threatening about 75% of the area. And several strategies were put by the government. We are on our third strategy now to combat land degradation, and most of the activities of land and water conservation are under the Ministry of Agriculture. I will share with you later on overall measures that were taken for soil and land management practices in Tunisia. But let me tell you some of the major causes about land degradation. Tunisia has undergone considerable land changes, and that's from the colonization period to from the 1922, but it continued up to date. This severe land degradation is mainly due to intensive cropping, waterlogging. We have some salinization and organic matter loss. The natural vegetation cover was degraded because of the cultivation. So to give you an idea, in 1922, we have 1.2 million hectares for feeding 2 million inhabitants, and we are actually around 5 million hectares for 11 million inhabitants. So the large development of irrigation in Tunisia needed to use more and more water for irrigation, and unfortunately some of the water quality is already saline. So in the groundwater especially, it's a saline water, and some even of the surface water, because of the nature of the soil, it has some salinity in there, and we are observing more and more the phenomenon of soil salinization. Besides the land change, the water erosion is also affecting 20% of the total area. I mean, the priority area where we need to take urgent measure, it represents 17.5 of the Tunisian territories. Even on the agriculture land that are used, we are losing like 28% of the total agriculture area of the country. Another problem is wind erosion, which is really important because of the nature of the climate in the desertic area in the southern part of the country. Other factors, of course, are related to the topography and climate, land management practices, the farmer, how they are dealing with their land and different challenges in the forestry area where, I mean, it's being used more pressure on those forested areas, more and more to take the wood, for instance, and other things. Some of the soil and water conservation measures that we implement, they are the terrace and contour patches that I show in the first photo here, which are earth embankment built along the contour lines or perpendicular to the slope to intercept the rainfall and trying to improve infiltration. We also opt for the hill lakes. We have around 1,000 hill lakes in Tunisia, where we try within the depressions to harvest some of the water for irrigation and livestock. Other measures, what are the ancient type of Josephore that we use when we have some trees and you build ditches around to gather the water and for growing trees. The fourth type of measures that is being used also is within the wadis itself, where we have what we call the check dams, which are installed to slow the flow in the wadis courses and to improve infiltration within the wadi itself. As a scientist, I mean, I see that modeling could help us do so many things, and here is just a small example where we used a model in on the Sarat Basin located in this semi-arid region. And we made use of this water model, the soil and water assessment tool, which is a distributed hydrological model developed by the USGS. Those type of models requires a lot of information, from the digital elevation model to the land use maps, to the soil maps, the soil characteristics, the climate data, but they provide you with runoff, sediment, and nutrient yields within the water course. So when you're dealing with such a models, and you cannot use them as they are, we need to calibrate and validate over different period of time, which we did in this case study. And the most important thing why I put this example is when we are dealing with the model, we saw that over 1,400 square kilometers basins, we don't need to put all type of conservation measures within these basins, but through modeling, we were able to see that only 10% of the area contributed with a maximum of 70% of the sediment production. So the rest of the basin didn't need that much of conservation measures. So the idea of just putting contour lines all over the basin on the landscape maybe is not the most efficient, but we need to look to have more tools to study this type of phenomenon and to target the right places instead of implementing this all over. So I'm closing here. I should add more to the, I have to say, we will be also having new challenges under the climate change, specifically with the increase of temperature and the decline of precipitation and more droughts and flooding, which we need, I mean, to study the resilience and of those of our ecosystem.
Excuse me. Please conclude. Can you please finish your talk because we're running over time now?
Yes. Just a few things that I think that fighting land degradation or putting all the policies there, they want to be effective without a societal commitment and the implication of the local population. We still need, there is a need for climatic data and the monitoring, especially of the soil loads and the land cover changes. Those are already have high level of uncertainties, and as we saw earlier, the variable and the processes of land degradation, they are very complicated. And I should say that we are still in need for the understanding the long-term climate change impact on soil degradation, on ecosystems, and on food security. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Last speaker presentation. Our next speaker is now Dr. Mama Svani, works for School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, University of Gambia. So he has done a lot of work on particularly on training and supervised a number of teachers, extension agents in the farmers associations. I would like to request him to kindly make the presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me just show my slides. Okay, am I audible?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present in this international seminar on land degradation in commemoration of the World Environment Day. The title of my presentation this morning in the Gambia will be on the status of land degradation in the Gambia, our collective obligation for better future. And my talking point for today is going to be very brief to give you country background and to give you the status of land degradation in the Gambia and what are the impacts of these. And we'll conclude by looking into mechanisms that will be our collective obligations, the way forward, and some ongoing projects in the Gambia. Just a country background is for some of you who might never visited Gambia, or you must have heard the Gambia is a very small country, a very fragile country. In other words, it is at the western part of Africa, and if you heard of Atlantic Ocean, it is at the eastern seaboard of the Atlantic Ocean, which of course stretches about 450 kilometers in interland through the River Gambia, and it has an approximately 80 kilometers coastline and over 200 kilometers of sheltered shoreline within the tidal reaches of the River Gambia. And in terms of the landscape, it is highly characterized by savanna, low hills with an elevation of up to only 53 meters above sea level. So looking at the country background too, is you look at the map on the chart on the far right, It is just to tell you of recent from the 2010 to 2020, the population is increasing with an estimated density of over 200 people per square kilometer. And this makes the country one of the most densely populated country in the region. And because of this, it has an implications on the productive resources, which of course land is one of it. And it has a huge pressure on infrastructure and also meeting the needs of social services. It is a country that is highly dependent on agriculture, which of course we use land resources as well. But realizing the fact that this is a country, this is highly vulnerable to shocks, most importantly, the climate shocks. We are talking about climate change. This is the world agenda nowadays. So just to give you a snapshot of the ecoregions of the Gambia and the topography, if you look at this map here, the map is trying to show you the different regions of the Gambia. We'll have agricultural regions. You look at the northern part of the country where you have NB. This is the northern part of this is an area that is highly characterized to be agricultural expansion zone. And some parts of CRR, this is Central River region. And we also have the South Bank. This is where you have the green, the colored. This is in the West Coast region. And you have some parts of LRR, Lower River region, and some part of URR, that is the Upper River region. But what we can see, the agricultural expansion zone is predominantly in the northern part of the Gambia, that is in the North region, Northern Bank region, and that of the southern CRR, the central southern part of the country. So looking at the broad land cover map of the country, this is about 2016, you look at the entire country in terms of the land cover. This is trying to show the map. You have areas that are covered with trees and shrub plants, and the majority of the places you have the cropland. Cropland is highly dense in the northern part of the country. And in the western part of the country, where you have a growing built-up area in terms of infrastructural development, as you can see in the map. And this is having an effect on land productivity, which we will see shortly. So now we will look into the status of land degradation in the Gambia from the from the land degradation neutrality report. We've seen that land productivity dynamic map of the Gambia, which of course is trying to look into three possibly areas, that is the land cover, the soil organic carbon, as well as the land productivity. So this map you see in here is, telling us the land productivity dynamics of the country. What you can see, looking at all these regions, administrative regions of the Gambia, you have areas that are showing declining productivity. Some areas are showing early signs of decline. Some areas are showing in terms of stability, but they are stressed. And there are areas that are stable, not stressed at all. But what we can see in this map, the northern part of the country, that is the North Bank here, where we see initially you have the red color here is very apparent here. These are the areas that are showing decline productivity, as well as some part of the CRR. And in the preceding slide, we've seen the agricultural expansion zone of the country. And these are areas that are also showing land productivity, declined land productivity in the country. So based on this, from the neutrality reports, you will see in terms of the degraded land in the Gambia, as we say, the forest cover has declined greatly from 41 kilometers squared in 2000, and this has shown almost a decrease in 4 kilometers squared. But the total area of degraded land in terms of land cover change is calculated at 4 kilometers square. So for land productivity, we have almost 10% degraded or lost in that. But for the soil organic carbon, this is very interesting. Over the country, it has been generally expressed to be low, though with a wide range of, let's say, 26 tons per hectare to almost 43 tons per hectare across the countries, normally in the wetland. So for the artificial lands, this is normally around 26 tons per hectare lost of soil carbon, organic carbon.
Excuse me, Dr. Mama, can you conclude the presentation because we are just close to time now?
Okay, so I will conclude shortly. This is just to show you the land degradation hotspots in the country, just to stress the two regions are very eminent. So what are the factors? Factors are primarily land use, overuse of land for production, deforestation, farming, as well as the influence of climate change. So the main drivers, you can see them here as they are deforestation, overgrazing, urbanization, infrastructural development. And this is also eminent in the regional drivers of land degradation in the two regions, North Bank and the CRR. So what are the impacts? The impacts are eminent: loss of soil facility, you have destruction of species, land degradation, which also have impact on food security, as well as causing forced migration. And this can also lead to some conflicts, for instance, crop and livestock rears. So what mechanisms are in place? Just to summarize, the land degradation neutrality is the way forward, as been echoed at the beginning. And there needs to be synergies built between several institutions that is already ongoing in the Gambia. And these are some of the institutions. This involve both state and non-state actors. So the way forward is to strengthen intersectoral mechanisms to promote cross-sectoral collaboration. And to achieve this, we need a favorable legal and institutional environment. And the use of land policy will be very, very essential to ensure that efficient, equitable, and optimal utilization of the resources are in place. So some ongoing projects, as just a conclusion, there are some initiatives that are already ongoing, and some of these projects are either 4 years, 5 years period to achieve sustainable dry land forestry management and as well as ecosystem-based adaptations. So on that note, I thank you. Time couldn't permit me, but I think this is just to give you the status of the degradation and the mechanisms in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have a time for a couple of questions for our panel discussion. So I like to request anyone from the presenters who have any critical question to ask and share with other people, please go ahead if anybody has questions. So we'll go only have entertain a couple of questions. Yes. Michael.
Assalamualaikum. I am Shafula from Comstac Secretariat. First of all, I would like to congratulate Ambassador Shahid for launching of this forum. My first question is from Dr. Abdul Majid. What do you foresee and the fate of agriculture yield of Pakistan? As this fate of yield in coming years, as this time This year, we have reduced 40% of our wheat yield this year in 2022 as compared to 2021. Land degradation is another problem, but in the backdrop of climate change, how we can fulfill our food supplies, food demands. Uh, is there any way forward or any plan of government of Pakistan or your research centers, NARC, ICARDA, and other Ministry of Food? And I have another question from.
Only just ask one question. You have three questions already in one question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
thank you. One is from panelist from international panelist. If you allow, I can ask.
Let me ask somebody else because we have time.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I think I can't speak on behalf of the government of Pakistan.
But what do you foresee?
No, I can tell you because this climate is going to affect our production. In Pakistan, it's not only the climate, it's also the whole management of those crops which is affecting, which is adoption of technology that's sitting on the shelves. They are not very well adopted. Number two, input supply system sometimes breaks down. The prices are very high in many areas, in many crops. So farmers are kind of reluctant. They don't have that much money sometimes to pay.
Exactly.
So you see, as compared to output they get, because many small farmers only grow for home consumption. Yes. They don't grow for market.
Exactly.
Because if the input prices are high, then they try to put less and less in. Because
has also overcome our agriculture.
So many
example of mango.
So many issues. Not only these, I mean, these urban lands, as you're correct, there are so many societies on very good lands they are being developed without any critical evaluation whether they are needed there. But it's more political, and also people get a lot of money. The farmer get immediate money in their pocket. They sell. In my own village, they are selling 10 times more for building. So why should they wait? They will make money and move to the cities and do something. So karobar shuru kar denge. Next, anybody else has any question? Okay. So I think we'll stop the question. Nobody's asking. We can.
Just a second. We have a speaker.
We have again one speaker, which was left out at the time, so she is online. So I can request Ms. Jacqueline to kindly make the presentation again, and we are listening. Are you there?
Ms. Jacqueline, if you can hear us, just share your screen.
Hello.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Okay.
Have you seen my presentation?
We can't see your presentation at the moment.
You can see it?
Can you share, please?
Okay.
No, we can't.
You can't?
No.
We
can't. We cannot see it.
You cannot see it?
Yes.
Oh. What about this?
Can't see it yet. Please try.
Have you seen it right now?
Maybe it might be coming.
Yeah?
Not, yes, it's there now.
It's there now.
Yeah. So please
Okay.
try within 10 minutes because we already going over time. Thank you.
Okay.
For your
Okay.
cooperation.
Okay. Thank you very much for this invitation as we commemorate the World Environmental Day. I'm Jacqueline. I'm working in a research institution, And my topic of today is achieving land degradation neutrality in Tanzania. Tanzania is one of the countries located in East Africa, and they have the population size of 59.73 million. And as we discussing about the issue of land degradation have the very connection with other things regarding environmental issues and regarding sustainable challenges, together with the loss of biodiversity, as well as the climate change. And when we are really regarding the land degradation worldwide, I think you can see the map there. As part of the area which have high land degradation, as it's seen in India and some part of China, together with the part of some Africa in Southern Sudan and part of the Nigeria and Niger. These are just the area which have the serious high land degradation when compared to others. And as we proceed to Tanzanian context now, in Tanzania, land is part of our natural resource, and we normally depend on the forests for main activity, as well as productive agriculture for other activity as part of the arable land. And there are so many causes which are affecting the land degradation in Tanzania. One of them is human population. As we know, whenever population is increased, the demand of the resources must be decreased, and other thing. Other issue is also climate change. There's another reason which affects land degradation in Tanzania. There is political instability, but for this case, it's not the civil war, but the issue of the regime within the system which is in place. And also we have other issues of cultural beliefs in terms of some aspect of the attitude of certain culture, mostly affecting the biodiversity. Another issue is the poverty, is part of and parcel of causes of land degradation. And also we have the unsustainable farming practice as usual, and insecure land tenure system. As you can see, the hotspot area in Tanzania, there are parts also which are very severe degraded. As we can see, the part of the central part of the Tanzania are quite highly affected with the severe degradation. And in most of the cases, these are deforestation is the actual reason for these particular areas. And as the concept of the land degradation neutrality, as it have been introduced as per Rio +20 outcome document, we normally focus for the future we want. And this concept normally deals with three parts. It deals with prevention or reduction of land degradation. It also deals with rehabilitation of partly of degraded land, as well as reclamation of the desertified land. So in Tanzania, we've tried to achieve this land degradation neutrality. The government of Tanzania have set the strong national environmental policy to protect the ecosystem. And implementation starts with some policy. As you can see, there is a policy which known as Tanzania Kilimo Kwanza, or agricultural first. And this policy normally focus on poverty reduction and promotion of the agriculture in the sector. And also we have also national environmental policy, which also strengthen or try to protect the ecosystem at large. Furthermore, we have the government has also strengthened the multilateral environmental agreements with international wise, and also Tanzania, the country also strengthened and in Tanzania Vision Development, which most of the time focus on protection of the ecosystem of the country. And as you can see, this is one of the photo which shows the project of land degradation neutrality, which is a project of sustainable management of Miombo ecosystem in western part of the Tanzania. As you can see, previously it was highly deforested, but after implementation of this project, I think we can see it's now improving. There's another project known as Kilombero Land Management Project. As you can see, project, and now as you can see in the middle, it was the river in between, but through this project, the area is now improved. And we have also another project under land degradation neutrality, known as sustainable management of Mount Kilimanjaro ecosystem. Previously, Mount deforested, but after implementation of now the area has already have the Lake Victoria Environmental Management Project Plan, Project 2. It was part and parcel of land degradation neutrality project. And here you can see there is the lake. So as part and parcel of the land degradation neutrality, this project is ongoing and it shows some successful issues. And these are some of the lists of the projects which are still ongoing. And also there are some concept notes which have been approved by certain donors. As you can see to the slides, these are part of the land degradation neutrality projects, which are going on, and other concept notes are still have already approved. And for my conclusion, for the issue of land degradation neutrality, is matter of the government commitment and willingness to set all the issues of the protection of the ecosystem in reference to land degradation by hiring technical and financial resources from other stakeholders, because the government itself cannot able to implement by itself. And thank you for listening. I submit.
Thank you, Ms. Jacqueline, for your presentation. Now we will move on to the closing remarks by Dr. Lingshu Zhang, Director, UN Environment Program, International Ecosystem Management Partnership, Chinese Academy of Sciences, Beijing. So please, Dr. Lingshu, if you can share your screen for the closing remarks.
Sorry, I don't have a presentation, but I made a note I can share after this.
Sure.
Yeah, and what I want to let, dear Mr. Ambassador Shahid Kamal and distinguished speakers and participants. First of all, I would like to express my congratulations on the successful launching ceremony of Comstac Forum on Environment Ecosystem Restoration, and also this REACH and Comstac International Summit on Land and Land Degradation, which to commemorate World Environment Day. We know that healthy ecosystems are critical to the achievement of all the SDGs, the Paris Climate Agreement, the UN Land Degradation Neutrality Goal 1, and the Convention on Biological Diversity New Global Framework. We see such a standpoint has been echoed clearly and sufficiently by almost everyone of the speakers today. So all in all, today we exchanged and covered lots of issues on land degradation, including agriculture, food security, water and soil conservation, and even agroforestry. And I learned at the word agroforestry when I first to be the board member of Agroforestry Center many years ago. So, and peatland, etc. So from my point of view, all of them, even we talked individually, they're interconnected with people's everyday livelihoods and their water, food, energy supply as well. In the COVID pandemic and climate change context, I believe it is even more crucial to emphasize the improvement of ecosystem resilience in managing local ecosystems and supporting communities. Particularly, countries in the global south are more dependent on ecosystem services and facing common issues on land degradation, as most of the speakers had already presented. And that's we also see on the other side of the corner is that it has a great potential in taking joint actions by all. Now, please allow me to share some of my observations and reflections on the key messages conveyed today. First, need for action is urgent. And as quite a few speakers, including my colleague Deji said, last year, the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration Initiative was launched during the World Environment Day hosted by the Pakistan government. Apart from Decade, there have been many other important resolutions, such as nature-based solutions, ending plastic pollution, which passed by United Nations General Assembly or at UNEA to tackle the triple planetary crisis, as mentioned by Deji. And however, a resolution will remain but a global pledge unless we follow up with resources and action to deliver. So there are encouraging signs, but there remain significant funding gaps, which, if not met, will impact the implementation of our goals. Second, synergy is essential. The way out of this dilemma is to transform our economies and societies to make them inclusive, fair, and more connected with nature. Recognizing the interconnectivities of all the SDGs and intertwined environmental crises, we must embrace nexus approaches, collective and transformative actions. Of course, innovations, science, technologies are also fundamental. So taking the agriculture and food sector as an example, we know that food system is responsible for 80% of biodiversity loss, and 85% of land, agricultural land, is used to raise livestock and grow crops for feed, but it only provides 20% of calories. Thus, there's an urgent need for transforming the food system. So in this process, mainstreaming the value of nature or taking externalities into account in such transformation process has been high on the call. For example, our team is now implementing an EU-funded pilot study in Tensong City of Yunnan Province in China, which simulates and forecasts the full cost and benefits on nature, economy, and society of different agricultural pathways towards year 2050. And this effort is to support government in making decisions that are both economically rewarding and environmentally and socially sustainable. Third, I must say, everybody is responsible. We know that we're using equivalent of 1.6 Earths to sustain our current way of life. And ecosystems cannot sustainably meet our massive demand. So our lifestyles are linked to 2/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. Research shows that sustainable lifestyles and behaviors could help us achieve 40 to 70% of greenhouse gas reductions by 2050. So we must adjust our consumption options. And such changes do not necessarily link to sacrifice. For example, one of our team's recent study using household survey data from rural China shows that more balanced and healthier diet has the potential of achieving economic, environmental, and human health benefits altogether. So thus, individuals and civil society must play a key role in raising awareness and urging government, the private sector, and all stakeholders to make large-scale and transformative changes, big and large. I think that's the point. So UNEP IMP, as UNEP's first collaborating center in the South and for the South, we are working through South-South cooperation on cross-cutting issues of ecosystem restoration, climate change adaptation, and sustainable livelihoods. At the moment, we are covering 30 countries in Asia and Africa, and always welcome all the stakeholders from developing countries and developed countries to join hands in addressing fundamental issues by exchanging experiences and lessons learned even. So for this, we're glad to witness the establishment of Comstac Forum on Environment and Ecosystem Restoration and its bright future as an active platform to exchange South-South and triangular cooperation. So I have to say that UNEP IMP will spare no efforts to support and wish to further collaborate with you all. With that, I want to thank you all for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Linshaw, for the closing remarks. With that, we move to the conclusion of the event. On behalf of Comstac, I would like to thank all the speakers for taking out their time and speaking on such an important issue. Also, a special thanks to participants who have joined us here physically at Comstac and those joined in through Zoom from across the OIC region. We hope to see you again for further important events. So now all the participants and media personnel present here, please make your way to the lobby for lunch. And that would be the conclusion of this event. Thank you everyone so much.